She could have easily dodged it, but her pride wouldn't allow that. Plus, there was something she wanted to see. She wanted to see the expression on the woman's face at the last second, when her final hope shattered. The desire for slaughter was building, but Sholtia desperately held it back. She knew that the more patient she could be now, the greater the joy she would experience when she finally tasted the blood. She wondered idly as the bottle approached, was it holy water or maybe a bomb? No matter what it was futile. What a sad excuse for resistance. First, she would slowly suck her blood up to the point where she was just barely still alive. If she was a virgin, she could just drink from her until she died. If not, they could have all kinds of fun in ways that caused her to lose as little blood as possible. Having decided that, she thrust the flying bottle away with one hand. The impact caused a red liquid to splash out of the open mouth and wet Sholtia's skin. There shouldn't have been anything but a faint pain, but for a moment, Sholtia's mind went completely blank. Her thirst for blood went right out the window. She stared, dumbstruck, at the place the pain had radiated from. It was the hand with which she had brushed away the bottle. From the spot the liquid had landed came a pungent smell and wisps of smoke. She moved her eyes to look at the ground, at the bottle lying there. A faint but pleasant aroma came from its open mouth. She had seen containers like this many times before. It was a potion, often used in the Great Tomb of Nazareth, probably a minor healing potion. Undead took damage from healing items. That's why her skin had melted slightly. Impossible. Her angry shout caused the air to vibrate. Capture that woman unharmed. At her orders, the vampire brides, who had been standing behind her watching, began to move. The woman had used the time Sholtia had been dumbstruck to turn her back to them and run. But the vampire brides closed the distance in an instant and grabbed her hands. The woman struggled, but the muscular strength of humans couldn't be compared to vampires. So easy for them to bring her back before Sholtia. Look into my eyes. Sholtia grabbed the woman's lower jaw and forced her to look up to charm her with bewitching eyes. She took care with how much strength she used. It would be a mess if she pulled too hard and accidentally ripped off her jaw. Sholtia could employ some priest spells, but because she was undead, she couldn't use the usual healing spells. After being forced to look, something like a thin film covered the woman's eyes. The hostility and fear on her face disappeared, replaced by a blank, friendly expression. That was the charming effect of Sholtia's skill, bewitching eyes. When they sensed the effect was strong enough, the brides let go of the woman's hands. Sholtia had several questions, but there was one thing she had to ask before anything else. She picked up the potion bottle and thrust it before the woman's eyes. Where did you get this potion? Who gave it to you? I got it at an inn from someone clad in black armor. She answered as if it was no big deal, but Sholtia felt her entire body freeze. Could it be? No, there's no way, but an inn in which city? It was an inn in Rantel. The surprise jolted Sholtia's sense of balance. She had some idea who this someone in black armor might be. If she was right, then the greater question was, why did this woman have this potion? He wouldn't have given it to her for no reason. Could he have? Did he give this woman some kind of order? Or was it possible he gave the potion as a gift to strengthen a relationship as part of his networking outside of Nazareth? She pictured the absolute master of the Great Tomb of Nazareth, Aints Ulgaun, in all his bravery. The worry that she might have ruined their master's plan shook her to the core. What are you doing here? What do you want? She didn't have time to speak with her usual refined language. Desperate to gather information, Sholtia now gazed intensely at the woman with bloodshot eyes for a different reason than before. Usually we do highway security, but we heard some thieves had a hideout in this area, so we came to check it out. Then it seemed like something strange happened, so we split our team in two. I am here as part of the reconnaissance mission. You split your team? Yes. We didn't know how many thieves there would be, so our plan was to probe their defenses and then lead them to where the other group was preparing a trap. So there's another team. What a pain, she thought as she clicked her tongue. And how many people came here? 7 including me and then her? Wait a minute. 7, not 6. Sholtia eyed the corpses scattered throughout the area. There were 3 warriors, 1 priest, 1 caster, and this woman. The numbers didn't add up. The woman responded to Sholtia's anxious look. Right, there was 1 ranger who would go to Rantel for help in an emergency. What? The caster's voice had been awfully loud before. Yes, it had been loud enough to be heard all throughout the hollow. Sholtia's eyes opened wide. She ran up out of the hollow at a speed far surpassing any gale force wind. When she reached the top, she scanned the area. But even with her superior night vision, she couldn't see through the trees. She strained her ears, but couldn't pick up anything besides plants rustling in the wind. Sholtia didn't have any perception abilities or search magic. It was virtually impossible for her to find one human in this forest. Damn it, she spat. The ranger had gotten away. Frankly, she hadn't been taking them seriously enough. The result was 2 escapees. She ground her teeth noisily. My kin, the shadow at Sholtia's feet began to wriggle. A number of wolves appeared, as if overflowing out of it. Of course, they were not normal wolves. Their jet-black coats made them seem clad in the night itself. Their crimson eyes harbored a malevolent wisdom. They were a type of level 7 monster vampire wolves. She could call upon many monsters with her skill summon kin, but these were the only ones that seemed able to track and pursue. Go, find any humans in this forest and devour them. In response to her screamed order, which could also be called a howl, 10 wolves raced off into the woods all at once. Watching them go, she still felt the chances they could succeed were slim. Aura came to mind. Even if this ranger wasn't as adept as her, they'd probably know a way to evade pursuit. In other words, she had to think of a next move, assuming the ranger had gotten away. She hurried back and asked, as if clutching at the woman, "First, is there anyone else who received a potion from this person in black armor besides you?" "No, I don't think so." "Oh, then, next question. Is there a chance that Ranger will meet up with the other team?" "No. The plan was for him to abandon the other team and go back to town if our group was wiped out. That option gives us the best chance of surviving." They were operating with plenty of caution. They had carefully considered a plan for what to do if they were defeated. That was why Sholtia felt cornered. This realization set the flames of her rage blazing. "You're a bit too smart for humans. If I get permission to rule over you vermin, I'll treat you like the worms you are." Roaring at them wasn't going to change anything. The news of a vampire at large would almost certainly reach the city. It wasn't clear if her appearance was known, but it seemed unlikely that a human's vision could make her out clearly in a low-lying depression at night. Still shit, she cursed, and dove even deeper into her own thoughts. Her orders from ain't your prey this time is criminals, people no one would miss if they disappeared. For example, if there are thieves who can use martial arts or magic, I don't care if you suck their blood and make them your slaves, as long as you capture them. If you find criminals who seem knowledgeable about world affairs and fighting, don't let them get away. And don't cause a disturbance. If people found out Nazarick was behind this, it could cause trouble for us later. Clearly, she had failed big time. She desperately held back the feeling that she wanted to rip out her hair. "I am still okay, I am still okay, I am still okay," she repeated, as if trying to convince herself. The news of a vampire may reach the city, but neither her name nor anything about Nazarick had leaked. In other words, there was no way to connect the vampire who attacked this place with Nazarick. She speculated that the people in town would probably just think that the mercenaries were massacred by a wild vampire, if such a thing actually existed. Granted, the scenario was full of holes, but she couldn't come up with anything better without more information. She was swallowed further into her maelstrom of thought. The next question was what to do with this woman, considering the situation. Being charmed didn't mean she had lost her memories. The safe thing to do would be to kill her. The problem was Aintz's intention in giving her a potion. If he had a purpose or reason for giving it to her, then killing her could impede his goals. That would be excessively bad. If she let her return alive, the people who de-hired her would surely wonder why she was the only one who made it back. Then they'd de-learn all kinds of things, including what Sholtia looked like. It wasn't such a big deal at present, but she couldn't foresee the effects it might have in the future. The best thing would be to contact Aints. However, Sholtia couldn't use message. So what should she do? "Ah, Lord Aints will scold me," she whispered so low no one could hear and held her head in her hands. "If only I didn't have blood frenzy. No, that's disrespectful to my creator, Lord Peroncino." If only she had repressed it. She could regret it all she wanted, but it was too late. It didn't matter how she got rid of the woman, she would be reprimanded either way. But which way would do the least harm? Bad was better than worse. Sholtia thought and thought and thought some more until steam was practically erupting from her head. She reached a conclusion. There were more possible outcomes if she let the woman live. Killing her couldn't be undone, but if she let her live, things would work out one way or another. That's what she decided, though she was kidding herself with all her might. What's your name? Brita. Okay, I won forget it. She had the woman Brita stand still. She gathered her 2 vampire bride minions in a slightly removed location. For now, collect everything that is here. We withdrawing. She wasn't really sure if they had time for looting, but she would risk it to cultivate a ruse. She wanted it to look like she'd been after treasure. She was failing her orders, so she should at least make an effort to disseminate false information. Mistress Sholtia, what shall we do with the rest of them? Sholtia eyed Brita, looking somewhat lonely, standing by herself a little ways away. Leave her? No, the other women. Huh, other women? Yes, Mistress Sholtia. When we searched inside for any hidden survivors, we discovered several women who seem to have been used to handle sexual desire. What should we do with them? Sholtia's face twitched. What the heck? She got the gears in her head turning again. They haven't seen my face, so it's probably fine to abandon them. But is that the right thing to do? It's so complicated. Maybe it'd be better to just kill them, but then it would seem strange to leave only Brita alive. She cradled her head with no idea what course of action would be the best for her. Mistress, what should we? How should I know? Sholtia's expression plainly said, why did you tell me something unnecessary? If she hadn't known, she could have defended her actions no matter what she did or how it turned out. But now that she knew, ignoring them without thinking would be a clear act of rebellion against her master. Whatever, I don't know, I have no idea. We'll leave them. We'll leave them and go. Stick Brita in with them. Are you sure? I don't know if it's okay or not. Shit, could you just shut up? My apologies, Mistress Sholtia. We're pulling out. Move. The vampire brides bowed their heads and set about their tasks. Sholtia curled into a ball, cradling her head. I am going to be in trouble. What should I do? But she looked up toward the woods the vampire wolves had gone into. You found him? She felt the kin she'd summoned disappear in the blink of an eye. They hadn't been returned with magic, but slaughtered by something. After you've thrown that woman in with the others, follow me. I'll set up some markers. She made her decision quickly. After shouting only that, she set off at a wind-shredding speed. Inside the forest, her speed did drop a bit, but even if a human were riding a horse, there was no way they could have escaped Sholtia as she was now. She ran through the woods and arrived almost immediately at the place where she last had contact with her kin. There were 12 people there. They all wore different gear. It wasn't plain, but rather their looks were all customized. It was similar to Sholtia's things. She could also sense they had great power. Sholtia didn't have skills to tell how powerful magic items were, so she could only guess. But she had the feeling their gear might have been legend tier or higher. She wondered who they were. They had a completely different presence compared to the other people she had seen so far in this world. It was the difference between lions and mice. She scanned all of them and stopped her eyes on one of the men. Was he strong? Surprised, she tried to gauge how strong he was. Since she wasn't specialized as a warrior, all she could tell was that he far surpassed not only her vampire brides, but also Solution of the Pleiades. She took a look at him. His gear was shaped for a man's profile, so she assumed he was male, but his looks were more androgynous. Was he a man or a woman? He seemed to be both and neither. It was even harder to decide because he was short with a young face. Was he still growing? His glossy black hair was long, almost reaching the ground. His ruby eyes were wary of Sholtia. He was wielding a spear that looked shabby compared to the rest of his gear. Use it. His voice, issuing orders that unsettled his party, gave the impression of a cold lake surface. Sholtia couldn't tell what he meant, but it must have been a fairly powerful piece of equipment, perhaps even equal to her soul god item. The humans began acting on the order, but Sholtia ignored them completely. She was wary of only one of them and didn't consider the others a threat. Moving in the center was a woman wearing strange clothing. One could perhaps call it a woman's dress with a standing collar and a slit down the side. It was silvery white. A 5-clawed dragon taking off into the sky was depicted in gold thread. In Aintz's world, the dress would have been called a cheongsam, but this woman wearing it was old. Her face was wrinkled. Her legs, sticking out of her dress, were reminiscent of burdock root or dried sweet potatoes. The dress really didn't suit her. Or rather, the sight of her in it was brow-furrowing. Sholtia purposely looked away, but but that would probably be their last little disagreement. Something happened that changed everything just like that. If Aints hadn't he captured Nigun, if Aints hadn't he countered the Theocracy's intelligence magic in what seemed to them like such a violent way, if the Theocracy hadn't he mistaken it for the resurrection of the catastrophe Dragon Lord, if Sholtia hadn't he been distracted, everything could have been different. But with that many ifs piled up, perhaps it was inevitable. The name of the garment was Keisik Koku, Ruinous Beauty. It was left by the gods that these people believed saved mankind. It had more power than even Sholtia. She shuddered. Sholtia, a guardian of the great tomb of Nazarick at the highest level, trembled. It was an alert from a keen sense, one could call it a sixth sense. As if her intuition was sounding an alarm, Sholtia's eyes moved to the old woman. That was who she truly needed to kill. Realizing this, she tried to move, but the man with the spear blocked her. Out of my way, she sent him flying. A fragile human body would have been smashed by the blow, but he was simply knocked back, not killed. He even retained his will to fight where he landed. Sholtia cast a spell, mainly at the old woman. Mass hold species, she would capture several of them. She had the feeling they would make up for her previous error with change to spare. Just after she thought that, however, her mind started going blank. It was as if parts of her thoughts were peeling off her brain. She couldn't understand what it was, and when she finally realized what was happening, she was utterly shocked and terrified despite being undead. It was mind control. She was being mind controlled, even though she should have had total resistance to it as an undead. The parts of her mind that were yet whited out contained a frantic hatred. A million worst-case scenarios flitted across them. She shrieked, "Eeg!" and shed tears of blood as she resisted the controlling power threatening to sully her. She was a guardian of the great tomb of Nazarick, but the taint continued to seep into her consciousness, ignoring her desperate struggle. She didn't have time to use teleportation magic. If she let it distract her, she would be controlled immediately. She created a purifying lance with a skill from one of her classes. It was huge and imbued with the holy attribute. Even though her alignment leaned toward evil, it could still do a fair amount of damage. Best of all, she could tack on the ability to aim perfectly by using additional MP. As she struggled with all her might in desperation, she glared at the woman wielding the power, threatening to violate her. She didn't even register the man with the shield like a giant mirror standing in front of her. Then she threw. The lance left her hand as if it had a mind of its own. From within her fading consciousness, she had used a jumble of her skills to strengthen the attack. The flash flew true, piercing the man in front, shield and all. It then reached the woman behind him. The two of them vomited blood. The group was in an uproar. This was the world as Sholtia last saw it. Intermission. The Rey Esti's kingdom, at the royal capital, the royal castle compound, Ro-Lent, was situated in the innermost part of the city. It was surrounded by walls linking 20 huge cylindrical towers standing at even intervals. On its grounds was Valantia Palace. In one of its rooms, which generally valued function over splendor, a meeting of the court was being held. Many of the great nobles and chief vassals were gathered. At the center was the captain of the Royal Select, Gaze of Stronov. He was kneeling before King Ramposa III, to whom he sworn loyalty. He seemed to have aged even more. That's what Gazev thought upon examining the king, comparing him to the last time he saw him just 2 weeks ago. The hair of Gazev's beloved and respected master had grown grey and stringy. His thin body couldn't be called healthy, even with flattery. His complexion was sickly. The hands gripping his cane-length scepter were withered. The crown looked heavy on his head. He reigned for 39 years and was 60 years old. Normally, he would have given the throne to his successor by that age. But the problem was he didn't have one. It wasn't that he didn't have an heir. There were 2 princes, but neither could be said to be terribly bright. It was clear that if either one of them became king, he'd make a perfect puppet for the great nobles. The old man spoke in a listless voice. Captain UV returned. Well done. Yes, thank you, your majesty. Gazev bowed low in response to the king's considerate words. Well then, IV received a short report naturally, but I'd like to hear the details of what happened straight from the source. Understood. Gazev explained the details of what happened after he left the capital and went to the village of Khan. He gave a particularly detailed description of the mysterious caster, Ain't's all gown. He didn't he mention the agents who seemed to be from the slain theocracy. Very few people needed to know about them. He didn't he think anything good would come of bringing them up in this setting. Instead, he spoke enthusiastically of the marvelous man who boldly dove into danger to save the villagers, despite only being a passerby. I see, what a wonderful story. Not giving danger a second thought and rescuing the weak is really something. In response to the king's admiration-filled words, several of the nobles called out their suspicions. There has to be something shady about him. He is a shifty character who hides his face, just a caster with a weird name. There was even someone who suggested that he set up the attack in advance to make himself look good. Hearing his life savior talked about in this way, while he wasn't able to say anything in his defense, made Gazer feel pathetic. But he couldn't let his anger show. Of course, he had a reason.